I've always liked solitude, the quiet, the kind that only exists where cell service doesn't, where the wind is the only thing you hear for hours, where your thoughts get loud enough that you actually have to deal with them. That's why I picked a primitive campsite off an old dirt road in the Helena Lewis and Clark National Forest in Montana. It wasn't listed on the official Forest Service map, but someone on a hiking forum mentioned it, said it was peaceful and hidden and never busy. Sounded perfect. I'd been dealing with a lot at work, project deadlines, noise, people. So I took a Friday off, packed my old Tacoma, and made the 6-hour drive from Spokane. The last 2 hours were just winding dirt road, no signs, no gas stations. The trail was rough, but I've driven worse. When I finally pulled in, it was late afternoon, maybe 4:30 or 5. The clearing was just like the forum post described, a small flat area beside a narrow creek surrounded by dense pine, no cell signal, just the hum of insects and the soft crackle of leaves. But one thing surprised me: there was already a tent set up, faded blue, slouched at one corner like it had been hit by weather and never fixed. It looked abandoned, no car nearby, no sign of recent use, just that tent sagging like someone had given up on it halfway. I got out of my truck and walked a few circles around it. No footprints, no campfire, no gear. I even called out just to be sure, hey, anyone here? Nothing. I figured someone left it and forgot, or maybe just dumped it. People are weird. So I set up my tent on the other side of the clearing near the creek, probably 30 feet away from the old one, still close enough that I could keep an eye on it just in case. It was a hot July day, but once the sun dropped behind the ridge, the forest cooled fast. I grilled a quick meal on my propane burner and sat by the water with a beer, just watching the light fade. By 9:30, it was dark enough that I needed my headlamp. Still no sign of anyone. I thought again about the old tent. It bugged me a little how out of place it felt, but I brushed it off. Maybe someone was doing a multi-day hike and just left it behind. Happens all the time. Around 11, I zipped into my tent and lay down. That's when the forest changed. You start to notice it when you camp alone a lot. There's a difference between natural sounds, wind, owls, the occasional twig snap, and something else, something that doesn't quite belong. At first it was subtle rustling, not constant, just then a branch cracking where no branch should. I told myself it was a deer, but around midnight I heard voices, not loud, whispered, almost like two people trying not to be heard, but close enough that I could just barely make them out, maybe 30 feet off. I sat up, heart knocking in my chest. I turned off my lantern and listened. Everything in me wanted to believe it was hikers or kids screwing around, but these weren't teenagers being loud, these voices. They were steady, calm, like they knew I was there and didn't care if I heard them or not. Then the sound stopped. I waited probably 10 minutes, maybe more. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Too loud. My tent was dark, but the moon was bright enough through the trees that I could see faint outlines. Then something moved right outside the zipper on my tent, tugged once, soft, deliberate, not wind, not an accident. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was just panic, but I grabbed the Glock my dad made me take, thank God, and barked out loud, I have a gun, I will shoot. The zipper froze. Then I fired a shot straight up through the roof of the tent. The blast echoed hard through the trees. My ears rang, but the silence after was worse. I waited. I yelled again, who's out there? No reply, no running, no movement, just silence. I didn't sleep, not a second. I sat there clutching the gun, listening to the quiet shift back into night sounds. The whispering never came back. By the time the first light hit, I finally unzipped the tent and stepped out. The air felt heavier somehow still. I looked toward the old blue tent. It was gone, not torn down, not collapsed, just gone. I walked over thinking maybe I'd remembered the distance wrong, but there was nothing, no tent, no fabric, no trash, no stakes, just flattened grass. Then I looked down. All around my campsite, circling it, were footprints, deep ones, like someone had been pacing the perimeter. Some doubled back, some were side by side, like two people standing close together. They weren't mine. I could tell by the tread these were boots, heavy, wider than my own. I didn't wait. I packed fast, stuffed the tent, the gear, everything into the bed of the truck in under 15 minutes. I didn't eat, didn't even brush my teeth, just got in and drove back down the winding dirt road, heart racing, checking the mirror every minute. I didn't stop until I hit Lincoln and got back into service range. Once I was calm enough, I called the Helena Ranger Station. I told them the name of the trail I used to access the site, the GPS coordinates. I'd saved everything. The woman on the phone paused, then she asked me to repeat the info. After a moment she said, "Sir, we don't maintain any primitive or official campsites in that area. That trail hasn't been serviced since last fall due to flooding. Are you sure about the location?" I was sure. She asked if I wanted to file a report, and I said, "No, what would I even say? I didn't see anyone, nothing was taken, no damage, just weird." I've thought about that night a lot since then. I can't explain any of it, the voices, the tent, the footprints, the fact that the Ranger Service claims that place isn't a campsite at all, but what really gets me is the gun. I almost didn't bring it. I'm not a gun guy, never have I been, but my dad insisted, said, "You're going out there alone, miles from anyone. Just take it for peace of mind." He's one of those people who grew up before GPS and bear spray. He trusts instinct and gut feelings more than anything. I argued, but he won. He even handed me the ammo box himself. If I hadn't fired that warning shot, I don't know what would have happened. Whoever or whatever was on the other side of that zipper wasn't just curious. They were patient, calculated, and silent when they wanted to be. That kind of silence, it doesn't come from animals, and I've never been back. I won't. I don't even look at forums anymore sometimes. When I think about it too long, I wonder if that tent wasn't set up there when I arrived, if it was put up after I fell asleep, and if it wasn't meant to be found then, maybe I wasn't the one doing the watching that night, maybe I was the one being watched long before I ever noticed. Before we dive into the next story, if you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon to stay updated with our upcoming Scary Stories music. In early July of 2012, I took my daughter Allison to the annual carnival in Santa Cruz, California. It was the kind of small-town event you look forward to: colorful tents, sugary snacks, the bright lights of rides illuminating the summer sky. Allison was 6 at the time, curious and energetic, her eyes sparkling with excitement. We arrived just as the sun was beginning to set, painting everything in shades of pink and orange. The beach nearby filled the air with the salty scent of the ocean, the sounds of cheerful laughter and the jingling music of carousel rides echoed around us. We wandered around for an hour or so. Allison insisted on trying the Ferris wheel and winning a stuffed unicorn at the ring toss game. By 8 o'clock, the carnival was crowded with families, teenagers, and young couples strolling around holding cotton candy and funnel cakes. Everything felt safe, warm, and inviting. After riding the bumper cars, Allison tugged at my hand, pointing eagerly at the food court. She wanted ice cream. The place was busy, buzzing with chatter and sizzling grills. I joined the line at the ice cream stand, holding Allison's hand firmly. The queue moved slowly and Allison became restless, asking to look at a brightly lit cotton candy cart just a few steps away. I hesitated, but it seemed harmless enough, close enough to see clearly. I nodded, reminding her firmly to stay exactly where I could see her. I watched her walk a short distance, staring at the swirling pink and blue cotton candy being spun behind a glass window. It couldn't have been more than a minute. A commotion erupted somewhere behind me, a spilled soda, some shouts and laughter. Distracted, I glanced back for just a moment, instinctively checking the noise. When I turned around again, Allison was gone. Panic set in immediately. I called her name loudly, trying not to let my fear show. My eyes swept frantically around the food court. Nothing. The cotton candy cart was deserted. I pushed through the crowd, my heart pounding as dread clawed at my stomach. I checked behind food stalls, under benches, everywhere. Each passing second felt agonizingly slow. My voice cracked with fear as I called her name again, louder now than barely audible over the background noise. I heard the faint sound of a child crying. Following the sound, I moved behind a closed popcorn booth near the edge of the food court. There, crouched low, I saw Allison. She was crying softly, eyes wide with confusion and fear. A man knelt beside her, a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He looked up as I approached, calm and disturbingly composed. "She got confused and came to me," he said smoothly, rising to his feet. Something about his expression sent an instinctive warning through me. He was dressed plainly: jeans, white shirt, baseball cap pulled low, but his eyes were oddly intense, his posture too rigid. Allison reached out her arms, sobbing louder. As soon as she saw me, I scooped her up, quickly wrapping her protectively against my chest. I stared at the man, trying to gauge if he was genuine. There was something unsettlingly off about him. Maybe it was how calm he remained despite the chaos, or how close he stood to Allison. My instincts told me clearly that something was not right. Without responding to him, I turned sharply and walked quickly toward the crowded main area, clutching Allison tightly. I immediately flagged down carnival security. When I glanced back to point the man out, my breath caught sharply. He had vanished, just disappeared into the swarm of people, blending seamlessly into the crowd. A sickening feeling settled into the pit of my stomach. Security took us to their small office area. They asked for a description, radioing out to their patrol team. The police arrived shortly after, taking my statement and gently questioning Allison. She was shaken and clingy, unwilling to leave my side, unable to clearly say exactly what happened. I blamed myself entirely for that minute of distraction. While we waited, I watched the carnival continue, oblivious crowds laughing, unaware of how close something terrible had been. It felt surreal, sitting there helplessly watching the normality of it all from behind the security barrier. The whole incident felt like a nightmare, but deep inside I knew it was terrifyingly real. Nearly an hour later, one of the security officers returned, pulling aside the detective who had questioned me. Their expressions were serious, hushed voices discussing something urgent. Eventually the detective approached me again, his face grave. "They found something behind the popcorn booth, right where Allison had been hidden. Zip ties, candy wrappers were scattered about." The detective didn't need to say more. I understood immediately what it meant. A chill crept through me, realizing how narrowly we had escaped a fate I refused to even imagine fully. They explained to me carefully, quietly, that the man likely targeted Allison from the moment he saw her separated from me. His casual demeanor, his ability to vanish without suspicion. This wasn't an impulsive act. He had been prepared. The zip ties made it clear how this scenario might have ended if I hadn't found her in time. The carnival closed shortly afterward, and we were escorted out safely. I drove home slowly that night, watching Allison sleep peacefully in the back seat through the rear-view mirror, her innocent face unaware of how close we had come to losing everything. The police promised to follow up, but no arrests were ever made. The man simply disappeared into the bustling summer night like a shadow, blending Back into the darkness days turned into weeks without answers. The horror of that night never fully faded. Every carnival, every crowded event after brought the memory rushing back, the fear of losing sight for even a single moment, the haunting knowledge that danger can hide in plain sight. Years later, Allison has grown older, thankfully, with no lasting memories of that evening, but I have never forgotten. Sometimes on warm July nights, I still find myself staring into the crowds, searching faces for something familiar yet unknown, haunted by the knowledge that somewhere, perhaps close by, that man might still be watching, waiting for the next distracted parent, the next vulnerable child. And the most unsettling thought lingers, that while my daughter escaped, others might not have been so lucky. It was the summer of 2014. That year, my whole family flew to Greece for our summer vacation. I had been waiting for this trip for so long. I couldn't wait to get there. Finally, when we arrived, my uncle was already waiting for us at the airport. We loaded our luggage into the trunk of his old Mercedes and made our way to the village. When we got there, some relatives were already waiting to greet us. Welcome, they said. We ate and talked about Germany and old stories from Greece. The next few days were quiet. I enjoyed the sun and tried to relax. One day, someone honked in front of our house. I opened the door and saw my cousin come on. Hop on, he said. Let's go for a ride. I saw a brand new BMW motorcycle. My cousin was holding the handlebars with a big smile on his face. I hesitated for a moment and thought, why not? The weather was nice and I had nothing else to do. So I put on my shoes and climbed onto the motorcycle. We rode along a long country road, uphill and downhill. There wasn't much traffic, but the roads were narrow. Eventually we reached the top of a hill where there was a small tavern. We took a break before heading back. My cousin had always been someone who loved speed. He liked to go fast and loved adrenaline. He was usually a good driver, but as fate would have it, we weren't so lucky that day. The last thing I saw before waking up in the hospital was my cousin veering into the opposite lane, trying to avoid a truck. When I woke up in the hospital, I realized I was wearing an eye shield. As I moved, I heard the voices of my mother and father. Where am I? I said, what happened? And then I started to remember. I took off the eye shield, but noticed my eyes were bandaged. Then I heard my mother say, you have glass fragments in your eyes. The truth was, the accident was worse than I had thought. I was about to lose my eyesight. My parents tried to calm me down. We talked to the doctor for a while, and eventually it was time for my parents to leave. I fell asleep and later woke up to a sound like someone moving around the room. Who's there? I asked. My name is Maria. The woman said, I'm here with you. She said, don't worry, thank you for your kind words. I said I had an accident and have glass in my eyes. Yes, I know, she replied. I heard about it, but don't worry, you'll be fine. I'll help you. I'm glad I'm not alone here, and that I have someone to talk to. I said, but why are you in the hospital? Then she said, don't worry, Costa, I'm here to watch over you. There's nothing wrong with me. I laughed. Apparently, she didn't want to tell me what had happened to her, but I didn't mind. I was just happy not to be alone during those long days. How did she know my name? Had she listened when my parents were here? Thank you, Maria, I said. Unfortunately, I can't see you. As you can see, my eyes are still covered. That doesn't matter, Costa. She said, one day you'll see me. We kept talking. It felt so good to talk to her. I told her about my problems, my life, and my dreams, but it seemed like she already knew everything about me. What I found strange, though, was that whenever a nurse came in or my parents visited, Maria seemed to disappear. You couldn't hear her. I thought maybe she was just shy. Days passed, and Maria sat beside me every day, encouraging me. One day she came to my bed, placed her hand over my eyes, and told me not to worry, that she would make sure I got better. Then I fell asleep. When I woke up, I heard my parents and the doctor in the room. Okay, we can take the bandages off today, the doctor said. They removed the bandages from my eyes. We were all relieved that I could see normally again and hadn't lost my sight. You're very lucky, the doctor said. That was close. I looked to the right and saw only a window. I was shocked. No second bed. Where's the other bed? I asked. What bed? The doctor replied, the second bed next to me where Maria was lying. I said there was never a second bed here, the doctor said. You've been alone the whole time. Who are you talking about? I told him that a woman had been in the room with me, talking to me, promising I'd get better, and saying her name was Maria. My mother immediately began to cry, and I understood what was happening. We all knew what had happened. Young man, said the doctor, you've been alone in this room the entire time. There was no Maria, but the important thing is you're okay now. You can go home. Yes, I was okay. I could see again, just like Maria had promised.